Welcome. Today, we are diving into a really powerful psychological tool for building mental toughness, stress inoculation therapy, or SIT for short. You can almost think of it as a way to train your mind to handle pretty much any pressure life throws at you. So, let me ask you a question. What if you could get a vaccine for stress? I know, it sounds a little like science fiction, right? But honestly, that's the whole idea behind this therapy. The goal is to inoculate you to get you ready to handle future stressors before they even show up. Let's break down how it's done.
Okay, let's get into it. And for all of you A-level psychology students out there, pay close attention. This first part is your core AO1 knowledge. This is all the descriptive stuff you absolutely have to nail in an exam, the fundamental blueprint of the therapy.
So at its heart, SIT is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy that was developed by Donald Meichenbaum way back in 1985. Now, the key idea here is that stress isn't just about the thing that happens, but about how we appraise it, how we interpret that event. SIT is all about being preventative. It's about exposing yourself to small, manageable doses of stress so you can practice your coping skills and build up a kind of psychological immunity. SIT is built on three really logical phases. The first one is conceptualization. This is where you and a therapist figure out what your personal stress triggers actually are. Next up, you've got skills acquisition, where you basically learn and practice a whole toolkit of coping strategies. And finally, there's the application phase. This is where you take those skills out into the real world, starting with little challenges and then working your way up to bigger ones. So, how does this actually reduce stress on a biological level? Well, it all comes down to that word again, appraisal. By reframing a stressor in your mind, changing it from a threat into a challenge, you actually calm down your body's physiological stress response. This means you're getting less activation of the SAN system, that's your immediate fight or flight, and the HPA system, which is what controls stress hormones like cortisol. You're basically telling your body, hey, we don't need to panic about this. All right, so that's the theory. Now let's look at how this whole thing works in practice. This brings us squarely into our AO2 content, which, as you know, is all about applying the theory to real-world examples. This is a super crucial skill if you're aiming for those higher marks in your essays. The applications for SIT are incredibly diverse. It's pretty amazing. We see it used for everything from helping sixth formers deal with exam stress to managing the anxiety of giving a presentation at work, and even in really high-stakes environments like professional sports and military training. And hey, for those of you aiming for those top grades, just notice the cross-specification links here. You can connect SIT directly to appraisal theory in cognitive psychology and, of course, to the biological stress response. This is just a perfect example of what we mean by cognitive reappraisal. I mean, think about exam stress. That catastrophic thought, I'm going to fail, can send anyone into a panic. Well, SIT helps you reframe that into something way more manageable. Something like, okay, I can attempt this question step by step. That tiny little cognitive shift can make all the difference in the world. It reduces the panic and actually improves your performance. Right, on to the really crucial evaluation section. This is your AO3. This is where you have to show you can think critically, providing a balanced perspective on the therapy by weighing its strengths against its limitations. Let's break down the evaluation. On the one hand, a huge strength of SIT is its long-term effectiveness, because it gives people skills they can literally use for the rest of their lives. It's also really comprehensive and flexible, but it's definitely not a quick fix. SIT can be super time-consuming, it demands a lot of motivation from the client, and, as we'll see, its success can really depend on how good the therapist is. Let's dig into a key strength. Now, in terms of our grave criteria, SIT scores really highly on applicability and generalizability. Why? Because the skills you learn aren't just for one specific problem. They can be applied across so many areas of life, from exams to your job. This gives you long-lasting benefits, which is a really stark contrast to something like drug therapies that often just give you a short-term fix for the physical symptoms. Now for a major limitation. And again, let's think in terms of grave. The effectiveness of SI-ART is hugely dependent on the skill of the therapist. A great therapist can guide someone through it brilliantly, but if it's implemented poorly, it can be ineffective or even make anxiety worse. This inconsistency means that the treatment can have low reliability because the outcome just isn't always consistent from one therapist to the next. So, we've weighed the evidence, we've looked at the pros and the cons. How do we pull all of this together to craft a really sophisticated conclusion for an essay on SIT?
It's all about pulling these different threads together into a final, balanced verdict.
If there's one key takeaway, it's this. SIT addresses the root causes of stress. It's not about putting a band-aid on the symptoms. It's about fundamentally changing the thought processes and the coping mechanisms that create the stress in the first place. It targets the cause, not just the temporary feeling.
So, here's the crucial point. SIT is a fantastic, really high-level intervention, but it's not a silver bullet. It's at its most powerful when you're dealing with anticipated and chronic stressors, things like exams or ongoing workplace pressures, where you actually have time to prepare. It's just less suited for sudden, out-of-the-blue crises. So the most sophisticated conclusion is to see it as one really important tool within a wider biopsychosocial approach to managing stress.
And that brings us to the end, but it leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? If you could use this kind of therapy to get inoculated against just one specific stress in your own life, what would you choose? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining me.